This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area. This, this, this should be played. This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
Due to some violent content, parental discretion is advised.
Shalom, Salama, Siyemi, and Shalom to you always, family abroad. It's your man Yashar Rawls, aka RedLetter Rap, and my lovely wife Yaza Red is right here with us as well, family.
Shalom, family.
Shalom, family. Oh, what a day. This is going to be beautiful. All right. So, as you see, we have in the background our thumbnail, right? So, just here let everybody know what we're getting ready to get on into. And let's go ahead and get into our disclaimer right quick, okay? Because we want to make sure that we knock that right on out right away. So, copyright disclaimer. This is our RedLetter Wrapped and Seventh Day Harvest Teaching Ministries copyright disclaimer. I mean, you definitely get it from the same place. All right. So, for one, we do not own the rights to the music that is ever going to be played on this right here, except for unless I say I made this instrumental. But other than that, if I didn't make the instrumental, we do not own the rights to the music. Now, so the intro and the outro, I own the rights to those. I made those. So other than that, under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, education, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use, and this content falls under fair use guidelines. And once again, you can find that at www.copyright.gov/FLS/FL102.html. All right, family. So, let me go ahead and share a screen with y'all. Let's get right on into it. Ooh. Had to make sure I pull that up in the background right quick. There we go. So, and make sure that I have that. Yep, that is good and blowed up in the background. All right, cool. So, family, we done went through 2 chapters already. We've seen a lot of very good, useful information, things that have, debunked a lot of things, that's been running around to this day, especially that's been coming to light within the past, I don't know, let's say the last 5 to 7 years, maybe even more. You know what I'm saying? Things like certain people have been called Israelites or lost 10 tribes that just don't fit the narrative. They don't fit the description. And other things kind of like we're indigenous to this place. That right there bothers a lot of people. I'm sorry. I know it does, but at the same time, you have to remember from the Willie Lynch letters, right? The Willie Lynch letters said that what they've been waiting on is the phenomenon. And that phenomenon is our awakening. And once we started waking up, the whole goal was to make sure they can lullaby us back to sleep. Now, even though it's not stated in the Willie Lynch letters, it is stated inside your Bible. It's to fulfill Psalm 83 that the name of Yasharal, or the name of the true name of Israel, would never be known as a nation ever again. And there's been crafty counsel by many nations, you know what I'm saying, making sure that we don't wake up to being who we really, really are. Because how can you be Israelites and be indigenous to this land when there's nothing in this land, period, that lines up with scripture? No matter how they want to try to flip it, spin it, twist it, say that the Rio Grande is the Nile River. I mean, how can you have the Nile River as the Mississippi River and the Red Sea or Sea of Reeds as the Rio Grande? And I mean, all kinds of weirdo stuff, man. I mean, you got to remember that these people that we have been in captivity to have what is called Egyptomania. And our brother Dante Fortson broke that down better than anybody. Anyway, let's not get caught up on any of that. Let's go ahead and jump right on in, right? So, chapter 3, traditions of Palestinian origin. So, I have not gone ahead and read ahead of anybody. So, if y'all been reading this outside of here, hey, all praises to the Most High. Ain't nothing wrong with that. That's what I give you the book for. But I'm going to go ahead and read this live with you for the first time right here. So we should next recognize that we can accept any local traditions of Israelite ancestry without being compelled to accept the myth of lost 10 tribes. Let's read that one more time. We should next recognize that we can accept any local tradition of Israelite ancestry without being compelled to accept the myth of lost 10 tribes. A vast deal of writing upon the subject has treated such Israelite traditions very cavalierly in order to avoid accepting the myth. The middle course is the true one. So, with regard to these many local traditions, we have also to remember the fact, ever recurrent in the Orient, of dependents grouping themselves about a successful adventurer who may later be reported as the eponym ancestor of the clan. Now, the Israelite adventurer has penetrated many lands and often gained control of tribes or kingdoms. The Jewish kings of Yemen and medieval Abyssinia are examples. We can therefore accept the fact that an Afghan clan may be right in claiming some adventurous Israelite as its founder and its members and calling themselves Josephites, without concluding that all the clan or all Afghans are of Israelite descent. Let's pause right there. Right there. Because this is one of the things that came up last week as well, that there is proof of Israelites in India and proof of Israelites in Afghanistan or in the Afghan areas, right? Now, by this right here, this one's a pretty bold statement, and I'm not quite for certain how to take this one, but we're going to take it with a grain of salt and allow the book to speak for itself a little bit. And we're going to pay attention to what Alan H. Godby knows and what he's definitely trying to expose. Because you have this right here as well. You see, I'm waving the mouse right underneath the Jewish kings of Yemen, right? So we don't fully know what Alan H. Godby's understanding of Jew, Israelite, and Jewish really are just yet. We don't fully know exactly his usage of these words just yet. A lot of us know the difference between Jew, Jewish, and Israelite as far as what we know from the scriptures, and we know who is not who and who thinks they are who to this day. But once again, as it pertains to the author of this book, we don't fully know what their understanding is of these words and their acceptance to certain terminologies. So we got to take some of this writing with a grain of salt. And I want to make sure we understand that before we move all the way on in, before we continue to move on in. We're already 10 toes in, those of us that definitely want to keep reading. All right. So let's back up a little bit. We have back up here, right? We have the middle course is the true one. With regard to these many local traditions, we have also to remember the fact ever recurrent in the Orient of dependents grouping themselves about a successful adventurer who may later be reported as the eponym ancestor of the clan, meaning the originator of this clan. And this originator has brought this Israelite seed into the Orient. And so there's my goodness. I know I've seen a couple historians, and I'm trying to remember exactly who they are. And I don't want to tell no lies because I don't want to be like, well, yeah, I know this one did it. And I don't want to subscribe to, just doing what some of the pseudo scholars in the past have done. Only thing I could tell you to do is look up Afro Asiatic or Afro Asians in the Orient throughout history and start there. Okay. Start there and dig deeper. That's the best thing I can tell you. YouTube that and see what channels pop up. If you have to refine that search, refine it. But at the same time, keep digging, because you're going to end up finding just exactly what Alan H. Godby just got done stating right here, is that has been a successful adventurer that was an Israelite that started a family or started you can call it clan if you want, in the Orient. Now, the Israelite adventurer has penetrated many lands and often gained control of tribes or kingdoms. Now, once again, for those of y'all that are just joining on in, there's going to be some terminologies here, like this Jewish right here, right? We don't fully know what Alan H. Godby's understanding of Jew, Jewish, or Israelite really is. So I want to make sure we have a reading disclaimer as we're going through. So those of us that we know the truth and we know these terminologies by Jew, Jewish, Yehudi, Judah, Yehuda, Israelite, we know what these terminologies are because we've been studying this. We've been reading the scripts. We've been digging deep in the concordances and all of those things. But we don't know what Alan H. Godby knows. So we have to allow his writing to speak for itself and kind of just take everything with a grain of salt as we continue to go on. All right. Is that fair? I think it is. But so he starts to say that the Jewish kings of Yemen and medieval Abyssinia are examples. We can therefore accept the fact that an Afghan clan, like an Afghanistan clan, may be right in claiming some adventurous Israelite as its founder and its members and calling themselves Josephites. without concluding that all the clan, saying, or all Afghans are of Israelite descent. So we can see that there have been some northern 10 tribes as far as the seed of Joseph being in the Afghan areas. Now, they're not saying that all the Afghanis are, and that's what he's saying. We can see that this Israelite seed has as its founder and its members and calling themselves Josephites. And we don't have to sit here and say that all Afghans are, but we can say that some are because it's been proven, right? So, conversely, the clear evidence that Afghans in general are not Israelites does not warrant or repudiating their claim of some adventurous Israelites as the original nucleus of some Afghan clan. So remember, when you're looking through the scripts and you're seeing the different captivities, whether it be Assyrian captivity or even the dispersion, right, of the northern 10 tribes in scripture. Excuse me. And then you also have to understand, remembering the different captivities, the Babylonian captivities, as far as like which parties were the ruling parties, right? And when you have the Medes and Persians, now you have a whole area over here. Now let's go ahead and pull up the map right quick, because I think it's very important that we have some solid understanding as it pertains to these regions and areas. Before I full on share screen with y'all. All right. All right. So all right. Pull up Google Maps right quick, right? Now, as you remember, some of y'all remember being 10 toes in on this channel when we went through the book of Joshua from the Septuagint. And we could clearly see that some of the places named in Joshua chapter 1, verses 1 through 9 from the Septuagint have the letter coasts, or have the word coasts. And in your King James, it says your coast, right? So we know that coasts, and we also know about the Negro land map, showing that Negro land was all of this, all of this, all of this. And we know that when you look up the word Tanganyika, that it translates as the word wilderness. And that area of Tanganyika was Tanzania and Kenya, being in the wilderness. So when you think about the dispersion of the northern 10 tribes, and we also know about Yemenite Jews. So we know that there was a migration going into here, into Yemen, And it's not impossible at all to think that they could have made it over here. Because now we have Alan H. Gabi as well talking about that there is proof of Israelite DNA here in Afghanistan. Proof of Negroid Israelite DNA in Afghanistan. And there's also proof of that in India and Pakistan and a lot of these areas over through here. So I just wanted to make sure we had a fair view at the map. And when we're talking about the Negro land map, or we're talking about what's in Joshua chapter 1, verses 1 through 9 from the Septuagint, which uses the word coasts, and your coasts shall be, right? Not just your King James saying your coast shall be, your single coast, but you have multiple coasts. Like you have a coast here, you have a coast over here, coast over here, you got coast over here, 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 and then all around through here, and all over here. Wherever the land starts to change shape, that's a new form of coast. And I need y'all to truly understand that, because that's exactly what that means. It's not just saying, oh, this here's one coast right here. Oh, no. So you have a south here and a west here and a south here and then a southeast over here and then a southwest over here and then a south over here and a southeast and then a southwest and then a west, southwest, another west, southwest, northwest. See, when you change direction, you changing the coast. Let's keep it simple. Just keep it simple, because that's exactly what that is. Anyway, I just want to make sure, because as we're going through here and we're seeing that Alan H. Gabi is talking about there is Israelite DNA proven to be here in Afghanistan that migrated there, right? And even in this area as well. So let's go ahead and get back to our book that we're reading, and just keep some of that in the back of your mind. Put a pin in that. You know what I mean? So let's get back to the book. And so, as he said, conversely, and even before then, we can therefore accept the fact that an Afghan clan may be right in claiming some adventurous Israelite as its founder and its members, in calling themselves Josephites from the tribe of Joseph, without concluding. So we're not saying that everybody, without concluding that all the clan or all Afghans are of Israelite descent. So no one's making that claim that everybody in Afghanistan is Israelites. No one's saying that, and no one's suggesting that. Conversely, the clear evidence that Afghans in general are not Israelites, right, does not warrant our repudiating their claim of some adventurous Israelites. Now we're seeing plural. It's not just one tribe or one man, but a couple different men or families had migrated into the area. Adventurous Israelites as the original nucleus of some Afghan clan. Excuse me. As to such Israelite adventurers and leaders omitting modern Europe, Timur had Judah of Germany as Shani Lemelech, second to the king. Genghis Khan had Soliman Haydar Shah of Bukhara, and a century ago had a Jew or Yehudi grand vizier. Abarbanel, Abarbanel was chancellor of the. I don't know that word. We're gonna look that one on up. We're gonna look that one on up because we're gonna make sure we understand what we reading. That's what I promote. If you reading and you come across a word you do not know, you look that thing on up. Make sure you understand what you're reading. And don't let nobody tell you that you don't understand what you're reading. Exchequer. See if I can stay on a roll. Ooh. All right, let me see here. All right, let me go ahead and share a screen with y'all, family. Like I said, we're gonna make sure we all get this, right? So let's go and zoom this on in a little bit. All right. So how do you say this?
Exchequer.
Exchequer is what it says. Exchequer. The Exchequer is the British government department responsible for managing public finances, collecting taxes, and overseeing the national treasury. Historically, it was the medieval office overseeing royal revenue. It also refers to the Chancellor or the Exchequer, the UK's finance minister, or colloquially, a person's available funds. So basically, a treasurer. So we can roll with that, but we got to make sure we understand what we read, and we can't just be reading words and then try to use them in a sentence later, and we don't know what the heck we saying when we saying it, right? I can't promote foolishness like that. So now the way they use it, Abarbanel was chancellor of the Exchequer to Ferdinand and Isabella. So King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, ooh, those are some titles of people we know about, right? So he was goodness, he was in charge of the royal funds. He basically was like the guy that kept inventory over the treasury. So Joseph and Daniel and Mordecai have been duplicated many times. Okay, now we're going from this and we're going into another statement. Joseph and Daniel and Mordecai have been duplicated many times. Moses of Corinth says that after the battle of Babylon and the Armenian Arshag the Great conferred up a brave Yehudi, Shampa Pakarad, and his family the right of placing the crown on the heads of kings of Armenia. The family held a satrapy. We gotta look at that too. I don't know what the heck that is. See, we got a bunch of words that we don't use. You know what I mean? All right, a satrapy. What does it say? Satrapy. A satrapy is the territory, province, or jurisdiction governed by a satrap or a governor in the ancient Median or Achaemenid Persian empires. It refers to the office, rule, or administrative era under such a ruler, often used metaphorically today to describe a minor, subordinate, or petty kingdom domain controlled by a higher power. So, once again, we just got to make sure we understand what we're reading. Right. Um, Held a smaller kingdom. We'll just say it like that. A satrapy, which once again, oh my God, is a territory or province or jurisdiction governed by somebody that, you know, is a part of a larger kingdom. So the family held a satrapy or a province basically under their rule and were still considerable in Moses' day. Pacorod was a dignitary of the kingdom and governor of a province, a prince of 12,000 men. Moses has been suspected of romancing for the purpose of putting his Armenian heroes in the line of Old Testament genealogies and official successions. But the fact that um, Pakarbaduni did not maintain Jewish customs is not an insuperable difficulty. Yehudis often exchanged their religion for noble rank, and his Shampa Pakarad was probably a Judaized Armenian, not an exiled Israelite. Very, very interesting. Now, remember, a lot of y'all that have been keeping up with our historians have been able to show and prove how this statement is very true as far as Yehudis often exchange their religion for noble rank. We saw it in the Maccabees. We also saw it in, oh my goodness, trying to remember exactly where else. Well, shoot, you see it all throughout the prophets in the scriptures talking about how, you know, they're basically traitors, whether they be princes, kings, others, even prophets or priests or whatever, basically were traitors to our nation. And that's all it really needs to come down to. But they had converted, and how even some of our other historians, like I said, have shown and proven how Israelites have converted to Islam, and even just basically other forms of religion like Christianity, Catholicism, and the list would probably go on. But regardless, the fact is they were still traitors to our nation by not keeping the Most High's ways. And so I guarantee the Most High dealt with them. So now, some of these names I've never heard of before, right? And a lot of y'all have never heard of them before as well. Hold on. Hold up. Hey, bro. I understand, but I'm looking at the chat right quick. Goodness. I'm gonna leave some of them comments to y'all and y'all to pray over, and that's gonna be between y'all and the Most High. I'm not gonna state anything one way or the other because I'm not gonna have that kind of thing on my conscience. But I'm gonna need y'all to be responsible, and I'm gonna need y'all to take any and every request to the Most High before doing anything. All right. So I said my piece and I'm gonna move on. Because I'm not gonna disrespect nobody that may be going through something. I don't know if that's real, I don't know if it's fake. I know we've never seen this person come through this ministry or come through this Bible study, but I don't know. I can't speak for everybody. So I'm not gonna talk one way or the other. But anyway, back to the book right quick. So a lot of these names here, right? These the Shampa, Pakarad, I don't have any history on any of these people. But Alan H. Gabi himself has some history on these people, or understands some history on these people, and that they had different provenances under their belt, or at least a provenance under their belt, dealing with other places. And that's what that satrapy is that sis Rachel S. put it down there in the chat for us as well. So we see that we have up here where he had also said that, it says right here, Joseph and Daniel and Mordecai have been duplicated many times. So I'm not for certain if he's talking about the names, situations, or the actual biblical figures, right? I'm not quite for certain what he means by this. I mean, so you can kind of take that a couple different ways. But I would suggest that what has been done will be done again. And if these right here, duplications of the story have happened many times over, then it's just in our DNA to live out this word. Like I've lived out a certain number of things from the word, and I guarantee there's a lot of y'all that have had different experiences that line up with scripture. I'm not the only one. I know I'm not. So it's just in our DNA, to go through these things. So he gets down here. The family held a satrapy and were still considerable in Moses' day. This Pakarad was a dignitary of the kingdom and governor of a province, a prince of 12,000 men. And it says Moses has been suspected of romancing for the purpose of putting his Armenian heroes in the line of Old Testament genealogies and official successions. Interesting statements. I'm not quite understanding where that come from, though, right? But the fact that this Pakaraduni did not maintain Jewish customs is not an insuperable difficulty. And that just means that this person right here took on a different culture's last name or different culture's name, but being the fact that they converted over to some other religion or name or whatever is not unheard of, is what he's getting at. And Yehudis often exchange their religion for noble rank. So keep in mind, once again, Psalm 83 is, you're going to see a lot of that. And I think it's very important to make sure, if you've never read Psalm 83, you read it, write it down, and pay very close attention when you're reading things like this or reading through scripture, or when you see things in contemporary time, like right now, how they deny certain things or deny facts and gaslight, so that way it can lullaby the real Jews, the real Yehudi or real Israelites back to sleep. So that way it's to fulfill Psalm 83. And others that gave up their nationality, they gave up their the customs of the Most High, in order to become a noble in somebody else's court, right? And his Shampa Pakarad was probably a Judaized Armenian. So this Armenian right here, this guy, he's saying probably, converted over to basically the way of the Most High, which in that terminology is Judaized and is not an exiled Israelite. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. This possibly puts before us a fact that must be kept in mind. In all examinations of lost tribes traditions, Yehudi, Muslims or Muslims right here, and Christians alike are fond of giving converts a new name from their stock of tradition favored names. An Indian chief, Red Dog, or Running Wolf, or Gray Eagle, if Judaized, might be known as Benjamin or Manasseh or Naphtali. His children may be recorded as descendants of such popular ancient eponyms. So let's look at that word right quick, because we don't know who all is watching right now. Eponyms. Are eponyms. An eponym is a person, real or fictional, place or thing after which something else is named, the word derived from that name. So let's go ahead and pull this on up. I want to hold this information onto myself. We ain't gatekeeping. Let's go ahead and pull this on up, right? So once again, an eponym is a person, whether they be real or fictional, a place or a thing after which something else is named, or the word derived from that name. Example is Alzheimer's disease is named after Dr. Alois Alzheimer. Eponyms are often used to define diseases, products, places, or theories representing a legacy that connects a name to a concept. So keep that in mind. An eponym basically links a name to another person or a place or a thing or a concept, like diseases, products, places, theories, things like that. Right? Let's get back to the book. All right. So this possibility puts before us a fact that must be kept in mind in all examinations of lost tribes traditions. Yehudis, Muslims, and Christians alike are fond of giving converts a new name from their stock of tradition favorite names. Okay? An Indian chief, Red Dog or Running Wolf or Gray Eagle, if they were Judaized, they might be known as Benjamin or Manasseh or Naphtali. His children may be recorded as descendants of such popular ancient eponyms. We find old Hebrew names widely distributed attached to persons and places. They are worthless as evidence of Israelite ancestry, but they urge us to inquire what sort of Israelite influence or tradition has been at work in any given locality. Okay? Now, once again, it is very important to pay attention to this. Like when you see people talking about this Mojave Desert and how it's the Moab Desert and all these different things. right? That's an eponym. It's an eponym. Is named after something, whether it was real or fictional. It does not mean that that's literally the place. But we have things like this, ideas like this that have been passed down and now being passed along and popularized, that we have this doctrine running around that make people really, really, really say that this place, this United Snakes of America, is the promised land, or it is the place, or whatever. We've always been here, type of thing. All because the Egyptomania of our colonizers and captors and oppressors, them renaming everything, has now finally taken its toll on so many people over the centuries. So now, once again, he says, we find old Hebrew names widely distributed, attached to persons and places. They are worthless as evidence of Israelite ancestry, but they urge us to inquire what sort of Israelite influence or tradition has been at work in any given locality. Okay? What caused this to happen? What type of Israelite influence caused this thing to happen or to occur? So, American Christianity has a host of Salems, Jerichos, and Jordans and Canaans that never knew the presence of a son of Israel or son of Yasharal. A glance at claims of Israelite ancestry based upon mere Hebrew names will convince anyone of a tremendous and widespread influence of the ancient Israelites. But the facts will not be acknowledged as evidence of genealogical descent from Israelites. And he's just saying the same thing that I just got done saying, or that I was making sense out of up here. And he just says it all over again in another way. The neglected writings of Dr. Joseph Wolff, the Christianized Polish Jew, are particularly interesting because he fervently, right, this Christianized Polish, we're going to just say it for now that we know that they're Polish, this Christianized Polish Ashkenazi Jewish person are particularly interesting because he fervently believed in the lost tribes and in the immediate second coming of Christ. And his missionary labors in the Orient nearly a century ago were the specific purpose of finding and converting his lost kinsmen. Right? So we're seeing how we're starting to get a better understanding of what Alan H. Godby's understanding of the word Jew, or the words Jew, Jewish, and Israelite really are. We're starting to narrow in a little bit, because when you say Polish Jew and talking about how his converting his lost kinsmen, he found numerous cases of bands of persecuted Jews taking refuge with wild semi-savage peoples in Persia and eastward and being protected by them. In some cases, the protected in the time came to be the dominant element in the partnership. And sometimes little remained save a tradition of Israelite origin, right? So these converts from 740 AD, they happened to be in a place And being the fact that they converted, they were now sharing some of the traditions that they learned from their conversion. The modern Jews of Kiva dwell with and intermarry with the Uzbek Tartars, he reported. He knew that the Uzbeks are relatively parvenus. We're going to have to look that word up too. That they came southward to the region of the Oxus in 1498 and established their nomad capital at Organst. I don't know how to pronounce that properly. That's a Germanic word that I'm not. I don't want to disrespect it, but this right here, or Organst in Kiva, the ancient Choresmia. But Wolf was not minutely informed concerning the earlier history of this region and did not know that his Jews of Kiva were themselves largely the descendants of Tartars who had been Judaized more than 1,000 years before. There's some truth, absolute truth, because we know that Tartars, if y'all remember some of the teachings that TU Ministry brought to us some years back, showing that these Tartars are tied to Scythians, they're tied to Goths, Visigoths, they're tied to a lot of different European people that have some very sickening traditions. And that these so-called Jews of Kiva were themselves largely the descendants of Tartars who had been Judaized, meaning they were converts more than 1,000 years before. So naturally then, the Jews of modern Bukhara, when much oppressed, take refuge with the desert nomads at Mawar, Sarakas, Akal, and with the Hazara of Afghanistan. An ancient Jewish school survived at Mawar or Merv. Interesting things. Now, I passed by something earlier on, right? These people, he's showing little by little, right? And I know that I said that we're starting to get a clearer understanding of what Alan H. Gabi's understanding of the words Jew, Jewish, and Israelite really, really are, little by little by little. And so once you look back up here, you start, and you got to, if we have to read it slower, we will. But he found numerous cases of bands of persecuted Jews taking refuge with wild, semi-savage peoples in Persia and eastward and being protected by them. In some cases, the protected in that time came to be the dominant element in the partnership. So these converts here end up becoming the dominant element in the partnership. And sometimes little remain save a tradition of Israelite origin. So little, once again, little nuances or traditions that they learned when they became converts. And the modern Jews of Kiva dwell with and intermarry with the Uzbek Tartars. Now, when I look at this Uzbek right here, right, I'm reminded of the book of Job and how it starts off by saying there was a man named Job who lived in the land of Uz. And when you start paying attention to the names of his friends, right? And you look up these names in your concordance, you find that all of these people are Edomites. Everybody, even Job. Job was an Edomite, and all of his friends were Edomites. They all came from Edomite tribes from Mount Seir. So when you see this, when I see this, these people, they dwelled with and intermarried with the Uzbek Tartars. So these were just they were just intermarrying back with the same people with maybe a distant relatives of some sort. He knew that the Uzbeks are relatively parvenist. Now this is the word we need to look up, right? Uzbeks are a Turkic speaking prominent Sunni Muslim people originating from Central Asia. Interesting. Okay. Parvenist. Let's go ahead and pull up what Sis pulled up because she saved us some time. Parvenus. A parvenu is a person from a humble background who has suddenly acquired wealth or high social status but lacks the refinement, manners. Bless you, babe. But they lack the refinement, manners, or acceptance to appropriate for their new position, or acceptance appropriate for their new position. And it says, put right here, Uzbeks are a Turkic-speaking, predominantly Sunni Muslim people originated from Central Asia. Well, we definitely know from some other histories that these Turks right here. Oh, I'm sitting here. I'm looking. I'm trying to point on the. Goodness. It's like I'm clicking on modern Jew and I'm really pointing at the comment. Anyway, it's all right. Let's get back to what we're doing. Primarily inhabiting Uzbekistan with significant populations of Afghanistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan. Yeah. Turkish, Yiddish. Yeah. All right. Keep it pulling back down a little bit. So once again, he says that these people, these so-called Jews of Khiva, were themselves largely descendants of Tartars who had been Judaized more than 1,000 years before. Naturally, then the Jews of modern Bukhara, when much oppressed, take refuge with the desert nomads of Mawar, Sarakas, and Akal, and with the Hazara of Afghanistan. An ancient Jewish school survived at Mawar or Merv. So we still see converts. So Wolf himself here, he found a B'nai Israel at Pune, India, totally distinct from the Yehudi or Jews of Hindustan and Europe. They came from Arabia, had forgotten the Torah, repeated certain Hebrew prayers which they could not understand, and read the Pentateuch a little without knowing what it meant. Their Arabian ancestors may have never known much more. He also found other B'nai Yasharal or Israel at Bombay, about 1,000 families entirely distinct from the Yehudi there. Dr. Grant found Nestorian Christians in Kurdistan who said they were B'nai Israel, but not Jews, not Yehudi. So they were from the northern 10 tribes, but they were not Yehudi. Captain Bertram Dixon reports that Jewish communities all through Kurdistan and sees no reason to doubt that they have been there since Sargon's deportation. Wolf found that 15,000 Bukhara Jews, preferring to be known as B'nai Israel or Yasharal, he found Afghans who were not Yehudis, but who insisted on their descent from the B'nai Israel or sons of Yasharal. They had a long genealogical table which he published, tracing their descent through Kish, the father of Saul, clear back to Adam. At the present time, Sir T.H. Holditch reports the ruling Afghans calling themselves Durrani and B'nai Yasharal, but we are not Yehudi, which means that they are Muslims and that Yehudi is a sectarian term, not a racial term, not a racial one. Holditch found an Afghan ruler claiming that their hatred of the Yehudi dated from Rehoboam's time, and those of Hebraic faith claimed descent from Kish, 1 Samuel 9:1. All of which may be accepted without involving any notion of 10 lost tribes. So let's pause. So we're seeing that some of these folks in these areas, they align themselves as being from the northern 10 tribes, and that they say flat out they are not Yehudi. They're not from the southern tribes of Judah. So they're not Benjamites, they're not Levites, they're not from Yehuda. And a matter of fact, they even go further into saying that they don't like. Right? He said an Afghan ruler claiming that their hatred of the Yehudi dated from Rehoboam's time. So when the kingdom split, this beef that was between the northern 10 tribes and the southern tribes. So when you go back into, Samuel, not just Samuel, but Kings, Chronicles, things like that, pay very close attention to that split. Right? So right here. I don't know how to pronounce that name. Cardinal Manon, Cardinal Manon quotes another form of Afghan tradition that the Yehudi of the tribe of Asher were founders of the Afghans, and that they moved thence down the Indus into India. Whence the Yehudi in India today from the mouth of the Indus down to the west coast, while Manasseh settled in the borders of China and Tartary, and 5 centuries later he spread all through Asia. This relates itself definitely to Yehudis still living in the mountains east and southeast of Afghanistan, on the Indian frontier. So Wolf reports upon the heights of Badakistan, northeast of Kabul, the tribes of Naphtali, Dan, Zebulun, and Asher, Benjamin of Tudela, heard of some tribes in the mountains of Nishapur in Persia, and then the Yehudis, we're going to come back up that. The Yehudis of Bokhara told Wolf that Naphtali and Zebulun lived in the Hindu Kush by brigandage, but they know the Shemai Yasharal. They told him that the Yehudis in the Aral Mountains claimed to be of the tribe of Naphtali. So let's hold on for one moment. Let's go ahead and give y'all a moment to screenshot those books and those references right there. So those of y'all that want to look deeper into these historical conversations, these historical geographical locations, things like that, by all means, please do, right? Make sure you're sharing this information along the way, right? Because some of us, life be lifing, right? And we still need some help. You know what I'm saying? The Most High made us to be a part of one body, and everybody has their own part to play. So this is very, very powerful information, though. Very, very powerful information. So that way it can also help us understand that the lost 10 tribes, they didn't come over here, but they're still over there. So there's a reason why the scripture said that we will be scattered to the four corners, right? And so the northern 10 tribes have been scattered throughout the Middle East, India, and throughout the Afghan, Pakistan area, things like that, China, things, but the southern 2.5 or 3 tribes were scattered in many other places. Many other places. So let's see here. This one runs right here, very, very interesting. The Bokhara Israel have once forgotten Torah themselves. Oh, hold on. We done moved a little too far. Right here. These right here. Bokhara told Wolf that Naphtali and Zebulun lived in the Hindu Kush by brigandage, but they know the Shema Yisrael or Yasharal. So they know Deuteronomy 4 and 6 or 6 and 4 through 5, right? Shema Yasharal. Yahuwah, your Eluah, is one. Hear, O Israel, Yahuwah, your Eluah is one, is Akkad, right? So they know that part. They told him that the Yehudi in the Aral Mountains claimed to be of the tribe of Naphtali. The Bokhara Yasharal had once forgotten Torah themselves till knowledge of it was revived among them in modern times by Joseph the Maghrebi from Tetuan, Morocco. In the time of Genghis Khan, many of them migrated. He found Malabar Yehudi or Yehudis claiming that 10,000 of their ancestors left Palestine at the time of Titus's capture of Jerusalem and eventually reached India. They had no notion of descent from the Sargonic deportation. So when you're looking in what is it, Chronicles and Kings, and you see that the Assyrian captivity right there, they don't know anything about that one, right? They don't know anything about that one right there as far as like being dispersed through that one. They were dispersed from a different way. The Yehudis of Aden at the mouth of the Red Sea had their oh my goodness, had been there from time immemorial. Oh my goodness. Immemorial. I'm tongue tied. Too many M's right there, bro. Time immemorial. Perhaps they were a commercial colony of Solomon's in the Queen of Sheba's ancient domain. Wolfe thought that he had found the Rechabites in the B'nai Arhab of the Yemenite Yehudi. These Yemenite Yehudis cursed the name of Ezra and will not give his name to any of their people. Man, their attitude suggests their origin at a definite stage in Hebrew history. Benjamin of Tudela thought Aden was the biblical Eden, whence Adamic Judaism originated, or Adamic Judaism originated. Such discoverers of Eden do not think it necessary to explain why later savage or semi-savage people are thought worthy to dwell in the land from which Adam was expelled. Right? Contrasting with this sharp antagonism to Ezra, Wolfe was told at Cairo that they had a manuscript Pentateuch written by Ezra, held so sacred that anathemas of the rabbis were hurled at everyone venturing to open the chest where it was kept. Another older manuscript at Malta near Cairo worked many miracles. On the other hand, among the Iranic Ossetis of Mount Caucasus, Elijah has become a fire god or storm god and is worshipped as Mar-Ilah. Sheesh. Mar-Ilah. These descendants of proselyted people have largely lost their Judaism. So they're lost. They're definitely lost. They don't fully know, who they are or what they are. They may know certain things, certain stories they can identify with that have been passed down. And to a degree, it's like, what's worse, right? I'm pretty certain, they had to go through their own struggles with, fighting for their lives, dealing with famine, sword, certain captivity, colonization, things like that. They've had to go through that there as well. But I can only hope and pray that by now, right? That by now, that the Most High's word has definitely been coming through for them, as far as like waking them up in the lands of their dispersion to who they really, really are. Right? So interesting. These descendants of proselyted people have largely lost their Judaism. That's what we just said. Again, in Kiva, Wolfe found people, oh my goodness, ostensibly, oh my goodness, we got to look this one up too. A lot of words that we just don't be using, right? We just do not be using these words. Oh goodness. There it is. All right. So let me go ahead and pull y'all on into this one. All right. Ostensibly, right? As an adverb meaning to all outward appearances, something is stated or seems to be true, but it may not actually be the case. It suggests a discrepancy between the stated reason for an action and the real hidden reason, functioning as a synonym for purportedly or seemingly or on the surface. You know what I'm saying? So very interesting wordplay. All right. Now I don't know why he just didn't just say the simple part. Say it in a more simple way. It wouldn't have hurt. It wouldn't have hurt. Right. So again, in Kiva, Wolf found people that seemed to be, but wasn't really the case, right? That they were Yehudi, yet claiming to be of ancient Canaanite ancestry, Hivite, Perizzite, Jebusite, scorning other Yehudis and cursing Joshua in their prayers. Oh my Yah. All right. Make sure we if you really want to look into some of those right there, these are some more titles, some more book titles to look into. I guarantee there's a couple of these that probably are going to be really expensive. I mean, I can tell by some of the titles, like Jews in Many Lands, the repetition of place names from the lower Euphrates and Persian Gulf across southern Arabia and Somaliland seem to suggest continuous migration from the east. Hmm. Mm-mm-mm. All right. So, whence came this curious tradition? Where'd it come from? Were the leading features of Judaism developed in Palestine before the Israelite invasion? There is a similar antagonism in Abyssinia between Falashas and Kamans. In the Atlas Mountains of Morocco are ancient communities of Yehudis, totally distinct from the Spanish Jews or Yehudi of the lowland towns. They call themselves Plishtin or Pelishtim. The name we anglicize is Philistines. The community is very ancient. Tombs are shown that date near the beginning of the Christian era. They have a tradition that they came there after a capture of Jerusalem. So Charles D. Foucault first visited them in August. Oh my goodness. Augustine Bernard has described them at length. Still more striking is it that Berbers in the Ghat Oasis, 800 miles south of Tunis or Tunis, and 2,000 miles west of the Nile, claim that they are Philistines who fled from Goth when it was destroyed. Mm-mm-mm. They accordingly named their new home Goth or Gath and view the all Yehudis and oh my goodness, and view all Yehudis, whether Berber or Semitic, as their natural enemies. It is possible for people who had never been in Palestine to have learned so much history to have claimed it as their own. Yeah, they definitely. And see, these Berbers, right? All Yehudi, whether they be Berbers or Semitic, they ain't feeling them. They ain't with it. Is it possible for people who had never been in Palestine to have learned so much history to have claimed it as their own? Such modern Philistines give us more respect for the story of Procopius, that in his day, steels stood in the coasts of Western North Africa with the inscription, "We are they who fled from Joshua the robber." Oh my goodness, the son of Nun. Goodness gracious. Again, the Berber Yehudi that dwell in artificial subterranean excavations in southern Tunisia have some Hebrew books still and call themselves Plishtin. Crazy, crazy. Graberg von Hemsu in 1833, visiting the interior of Morocco, recognized different strata of Jewish migration, and that the oldest was the Jewish element among the Amaz. Oh my goodness, Amazigh Berbers in the Atlas Mountains. They called themselves Philistin. The Judaizing of many Philistines in the Old Testament and their employment as royal guards and shrine attendants is to be remembered. Okay, so that's definitely some scripts to look back into to see where these Philistine converts, right, where they humbled themselves and said, you know what, we're gonna roll with y'all. Like we're leaving Palestine. We're leaving the rest of these Philistines behind. We ain't messing with them. We want to roll with y'all, and kept to it. That's something interesting to look up. Right here. It should be clear to anyone that we have traditions originating in different stages of Israelite development, in different epochs, and from different events, whether well founded or not. Not one of these has any apparent connection with the deportation of a few thousand Israelites by Sargon. As a group, they afford no support whatever for a theory of lost 10 tribes. Benjamin of Tudela found a report that the Yehudi of Kibar, so bitterly opposed to Muhammad, were of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh. We go ahead and go like this for just a couple moments and let y'all go ahead and screenshot those if you like as well. That way, all these little intersections right here in between pages, if they got some good sources right there to what we're talking about, by all means, please. If you really want to look deeper into this topic, I would screenshot those joints and look into them. Whether you're going to look into them from oh my goodness, the JSTOR or any other way, academia.com or however you find it. All right. So this ancient Israelite district, being the nearest to Kiabar And the Caravan Road makes the claim very plausible. Excuse me. This brigandage has been a chief business of theirs since the days of David, the enlarger of Gad. So Deuteronomy 33 and 20. Gad is a troop of plunderers. A troop of plunderers shall plunder him, and he shall plunder at the last. So Stanley translates Genesis 49 and 14, and Benjamin of Tudela records Kaibar brigandage, right? David Reubenai in 1524 came thence through Europe to Abyssinia, claiming to be a brother of Joseph, the king of Reuben, Gad, and half Manasseh. So E.N. Adler cites modern scholars who think the Aneze Bedouin are the descendants of this one-time powerful Kaibar Israelite colony. So this I don't know if it's, you want to say Dazi. Anyway, Dazi thinks they have been there since the defeat of the Amalekite brigands by David, 1 Samuel 1 and 30, or 1 Samuel chapter 30. Benjamin of Tudela was told by the Jews whom he met in Persia that the Israelites in the mountains of Nishapur were of the tribes of Dan, Zebulun, Asher, and Naphtali. We could think of them as deportees of Tiglath-Pileser the third, from 2 Kings 15 and 29. They were warlike, independent, living by brigandage. All right. Such Israelites were very powerful and Khorasan till recent times. Records in the Armenian monastery at oh my goodness. Oh man, I don't want to mess that one up. Kutais are claimed to show that the whole Gregorian region about Tiflis, that sounds like a STD. I'm sorry, family. Please forgive me. My goodness, claim to show that the whole Gregorian Georgian region about Tiflis was dominantly Jewish till a few years ago. Many independent tribes calling themselves Yehudi existed in the southern Caucasus up to the time of Russian domination. These few illustrations will suffice. We have no general reason to repudiate local traditions of Israelite ancestry, nor reason to think of all Yehudis as descendants of captives. Least of all, to think of them as descendants of one little group deported by Sargon. So he continues to go back to 1 Kings, I want to say 20 and 17 or something like that, or chapter 17 and such. This we have seen to be probably less than 1% of the total number of Hebrews deported during the centuries. We have seen claim upon claim to be survivors of Asher, Naphtali, Zebulun, Dan, Reuben, Gad, Manasseh, Joseph, and Benjamin, and others, right? The cavalier dismissal by some scholars of all such traditions have local ancestry or descent is most surprising. It is like crediting a claim of American origin and rejecting the claim of Missourian or Californian or Virginian or Vermont ancestry. There is no priori or inherent difficulty about preserving a tradition of ancestry from some special district of Palestine. On the contrary, the probabilities are in favor of such reminiscences surviving. Some more sources right there if y'all want to screenshot them. So basically, what we're getting at, for those of y'all that have been following along, or those of y'all that have been kind of like, break it on down. So what's he saying? What's he getting at, right? So basically, in all these different Palestinian areas and other places, yeah, they found some evidence, but what's the best way to just flat out say that yes is yes and no is no in these circumstances? Because they've been seeing that a lot of people have been claiming themselves to be of Gad, Asher, Zebulon, Dan, and down the line. But it seems that they don't have enough oral history or anything to kind of say, well, this guarantees that this is who we are. But there are some things that they're saying that only lines up by saying, well, we don't mess with Joshua. We can't stand Joshua. We can't stand, these southern tribes. We can't stand Judah. Stuff like that. But very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. So this might be one of right on the end. So a people capable of keeping itself distinct in religion from others for 2,500 years and preserving accurate tradition of the land of its earlier religion must clearly have some distinct traditions that are entitled to respectful consideration. Right. So if they have been in this land for a certain, like 2,500 years, and they've been preserving accurate tradition of the land or accurate tradition that comes from Yasharal, stated in Torah, that would have to have some respectful consideration in saying that this is who they say they are, or they are who they say they are. And it should be remembered that such traditions were originally hardly genealogical. Some names like Asher being district names in Palestine before the advent of the Israelites. Semitic habits of speech would result in such local Israelites being known as sons of Asher or Gileadites, and so on. We must go further in this examination of traditions of Israelite ancestry. All may originate in historic facts, and yet the traditions be a perversion of the facts. We have to remember the ways of thought and the colloquial idioms of Oriental peoples. A relatively recent fact may result in a genealogical tradition reaching an initial point in the remote past, meaning that, yeah, they can make this claim all they want. Basically, it would be like, remember Joshua, or remember the people from Gabon in the book of Joshua, and how they lied in saying that they were Israelites, right? They said that they were distant relatives, but they were in fact Israelites. But their clothes had gotten in that condition because of their long journey. And so Josh ended up buying that lie. or Joshua bought that lie for a certain amount of time until they wouldn't go to war with another Canaanite tribe. And so they got caught, lying about it. And so when they got asked about it, they're like, well, the truth is, and they let it all out that, that they were not who they said they was. They were from Gibeon, and that, whatever, Joshua said, whatever it's going to be. But they lied to him because they were afraid. They were so afraid of when they heard about the Israelites coming into that land that they were going to wipe them all out. And so by running that game, it pulled on Joshua's heartstrings, and Joshua ended up making a covenant with them people by letting them survive and allowing intermarriage with them. So those people ended up learning Israelite culture. They end up learning customs and things like that. And I guarantee you, they passed some of these things on down and said, oh, yep, we're Israelites. But Alan H. Garvey is saying that, we have to remember the ways of thought and the colloquial idioms of Oriental peoples. A relatively recent fact may result in a genealogical tradition reaching an initial point in the remote past. So they have to have a very substantial amount of evidence on that. An excellent illustration is afforded by the modern Bukhara Jews. 95 years ago, Dr. Joseph Wolf found them about 10,000 in number with favored Persian literature and various marks of immigration from Persia to Bukhara. At one time, they had lost nearly all their Judaism, but Joseph ben Moses, or Maimon from Tetuan, Morocco, known as Joseph Maghribi, or the Westerner, came among them and brought about a great revival, introducing Sephardic ritual from Italy. So Elkin N. Adler found them claiming descent from the Spanish Jews driven from Spain in 1492. But Joseph Maghribi or Maghribi was of such descent. We see how a genealogical tradition may have been its origin in the work of an outstanding personality, yet the fancy that all who follow him are his genealogical posterity or have the same ancestry may be baseless. So yeah, they support, like some of these people support this guy right here, this Joseph Maghribi or whatever, but the people that support him look like him, right? They're Sephardic Jews as well, or Spanish Jews, and they may have been converts. Let's see here. So, thus, hosts of self-styled modern Israelites may have no Israelite ancestry. See what I'm saying? This is some of the things that they've been talking about, like where they're trying to make sure we're very clear about. They may have learned some things. And this goes back into what was stated many, many paragraphs before, where it may seem that way, but it's not so. And not only that, but they may have learned a little something, but they're not who they say they are, or names, Israelite names might have been passed around, or they might have fashioned these names and gave it to themselves. But where did that whole thing come from? How did it start? How did it get there? How did any of those traditions actually get there? And how long has the Israelite influence been in that area? It's one of the things that he was saying earlier on. So, again, we have to remember the peculiar idioms of early peoples when increasing from small, well-known family groups to larger social and political aggregations. They will express these larger groupings in terms of the family relationships. Father and master are equivalent terms in the diplomatic phraseology of such stages of development. Brother implies independence or equality. Son is an honorary equivalent for vassal or subject, i.e., a vassal of high rank. Thus, in the book of Joshua, we read in our English Bible of a city and its suburbs, but the Hebrew word is daughters. And it does not mean that the inhabitants of those suburbs are genealogically descended from those of the central city. It means that those petty villages are administratively supervised by the central city, that they are part of its little district or provincial claim. Kind of like what we saw earlier on about that word that sis went ahead and put up there for us, right up here. Appreciate you, sis. You've been putting in all these words right here. A satrapy, right? It's basically the same thing. These smaller towns and villages, are just under the control of the main city. It doesn't mean that it's an Israelite city. It just means that Israelites run the city. They're under the control of Israelites. So, to illustrate the point at some length, Ahaz, when terrified, sends to the king of Assyria, I am thy son and thy servant. Come and save me. 2 Kings 17:7. In like manner, Ben-Hadad, beaten and suppliant, sends messengers to Ahab, begging for life. Ahab responds, he is my brother. And they instantly reply, Ben-Hadad is thy brother? Or Ben-Hadad is thy brother, which a certain prophet considers a diplomatic defeat. 1 Kings 20:31. Turning to Hittite records from 1350 to 1400 BC, we find Mershilish III beginning a treaty, thus, like this: thus saith the Son equals my majesty. Mershilish, the great king, the king of the land of Kahati, the favorite of the storm god, the son of oh my goodness, this name right here, this is what's going to get me in trouble. Yeah. Shubibble. Man, you got me, family. I'm trying. I tried, you know what I'm saying? Shubibble Liuma. Somebody help a brother out. If somebody comes behind me and does this same book and reads that better, all praises to the Most High. I'm gonna say that right now. I salute you, sir. ma'am. I salute you for saying that word that I sure enough am not going to be able to say. If you say it way better than me and pronounce it proper, I salute you. I love you. All right. The great king, the king of the land of Kahati, the hero, by styling himself the divine son, he shows us that he was regularly addressed as a god by his subjects, just as the Tel El Amarna letters show us in the Egyptian pharaoh, addressed as my God, my sun God. Um, I appreciate you, sis. I appreciate you. All right. So he says this Dupi Teshub, grandson of Aziru, who he confirms as successor of Isiru, an honored vassal of the Hittite king. He regularly calls my son. Similarly, we find in ancient Egypt that the Nubian princelings who were brought under the sway of the pharaoh were rewarded for their loyalty with the title King's Son of Cush or King's Son of Cush. The like is still common in parts of the Orient, but how will such sons be understood by alien scholars 1,000 years removed, or even by Semitic would-be historians? Their own idioms mislead them incessantly. See, it's things like that, things that we are old school sayings that we don't use today. Like we would end up improperly applying the understanding. You know, kind of like how words have mutated into new meanings to this day, right? So, anyway, the Old Testament gives us a good illustration. Recent excavations show that Egypt held a controlling influence over the coastal plain from Philistia northward through what we call Phoenicia, at least as early as 3000 BC down to the Tel El Amarna period. This coastal plain of Palestine, Phoenicia, is the Kanahi or Canaan of older records. Politically, Canaan was the son of Egypt for a long period. Egypt was Kimi or the Black Land, rich alluvium. From it, we get our words alchemy, chemistry, etc. In our English Bible, it is Ham, right? It is Ham, a title which has nothing to do with the Negro race. Say it again for the people in the back. In our English Bible, it is Ham, a title which has nothing to do with the Negro race, but this sonship of the coastal region has no reference to the ancestry of the various peoples resident there. In the earlier period of Egypt or Egyptian domination, there were no Semites on the coast. I'm gonna go ahead and leave that right there for just a second. That way, give y'all a couple seconds to get you a nifty little screenshot going. You know what I'm saying? That's if you really want it. If you don't want it, then by all means. Oh, goodness. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I happened to look back at my phone and forgot I left that banner up. Appreciate you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I left it up that long. I brain farted and just kept on reading. All right. So the Phoenician traditions put their own arrival about 2750 BC. Egyptian records announced their struggle with the Hittites and Sea peoples and the Orontes, a valley 15 centuries later. Sheesh. Then the arrival of a Philistine migration in the south. But these racial changes do not affect Canaan's sonship. And when Egypt's control passes altogether, late compilers report from the diplomatic phraseology that Canaan was always a son of Egypt. So in Genesis 10 and 6, we have the sons of Kimi or Kemet as Nubia, Somaliland, Upper and Lower Egypt, Mizraim, the two Mizrs, and Canaan. It is a true statement of political dominance, whatever peoples came or went in those regions. Then in verse 15, Sidon is the older son of Canaan, and the Hittite next. It is a correct statement of the succession and political dominance of the coastal region called Canaan. Further, Mizraim or Egypt has other political dependents. The Ludim may be the known tributary tribes. On the lower west coast of the Red Sea or Sea of Reeds, the Adul of the Greeks or Adil, plural Adiel today, the Naphtuthim, 10 and 13, of Genesis, are the Naptuama, the town of the Tuama or Timai. The district known as the Fayayum today, the Libyan tribe known as Tuama, was settled in that fertile basin at a very early day and incorporated into the empire of the pharaohs. Their tribal name clung to the basin through 2,000 years. An inscription of the Ptolemaic times, or remember Ptolemy, an inscription of Ptolemaic times calls the Fayayum Lake Pond of the Tuama. Kalsuhim, if you all remember from Genesis 10, once you get down to the Ham, he's got all these different types of sons, right? And grandsons. So up here, we're talking about the Naptuhim or Naphtuhim, and down here, the Kalsuhim, right? Certainly corrupted, as various versions show, probably means oasis colonies, which Egypt maintained and to which political opponents were sometimes banished. All oasis settlements in North Africa today are called Qasr, or plural Qasr, common forts, perpetuating the tradition of their former garrison status. The Egyptian term for an oasis is uahet, which the Semites have accepted the Arabic wa, or wahet. So I pronounced it uahet, but these different Semites have accepted the Arabic wa, so it will be wahet, waahet. The Copts, Copts, or Coptics, I think, made it uake, and the Greeks passed it to us as oasis. The Qasr Ua would be oasis garrison, with the Hebrew plural Qasr Uahim. The turning of Arab Ark, chief of the nomads, into Alabark, or as Josephus calls the head of the Jewish colony in Alexandria, shows the same people who turn um, Kasur Uakim into Kausukim. All right. Interesting. So as you're reading through your Bible and you see these names a certain way from the King James English or whatever, but historically, depending on who you're talking to, it would have just a different transliteration or a different pronunciation. So once again, I stopped right there, said, well, y'all can get you a nifty little screenshot at some of these books right here. So just in case if there's anything there that uh, piques your interest right quick, and you're like, you know what, let me go ahead and find that book, because you got these sources that are cited right here. All right. So then the Pathros, son of Mitzrayim, is perfectly familiar as the Egyptian name. Hold on, let me scooch that over. I mean, no, maybe not. So then the Pathros, son of Mitzrayim, is perfectly familiar as the Egyptian name for Thabed or Patoresh, land of the south, the original center of Egyptian empire. But all this puts clearly the fact that the sons of the land are its political dependencies or its colonies, that its sons may be of alien races and religions. Such statements of historical fact make it clear that ancient Yasharal or ancient Israel could have had many sons who had no genealogical connection with the descendants of Yaquab or Jacob or Yaakov for others, or Yaakov for other people as well. I'm not tripping on your dialect, but it's saying that, by reason of conversion, right? And or maybe not even conversion, but rulership. So they may be suburbs of a Israelite dominant city, and these suburbs may have other people that live there, and so they're just calling themselves sons of, right? It's just a different understanding. An excellent illustration of the survival of an ancient honorary sonship is afforded by the chiefs on either side of the Hindu Kush, the northwest India frontier. The chieftains of Wakhan, or Badakas of Wakhan, Badakashan, Darwaz, and Chitral, Shagnan or Raslan, claimed descent from Alexander the Great, canonized by Mohammedans as Hazrat Secundar. Historically, this can mean only that various frontier chiefs of olden time kept the Greek road to India open upon condition of being recognized as sons of the conqueror. And actually, some of the present sons based their own claim upon recent intermarriage with families whose claim of sonship is very ancient. Thus, the sons of Alexander, meaning Alexander the Great, are here positive proof of ancient, powerful Grecian influence in this region. So, case in point, when you look back at the Maccabees, and I think it's either second or third Maccabees, where you see a younger son of Alexander the Great. Can't remember his name off the top of my head. I don't want to lie and say Epiphanies, but regardless, he ended up moving and staying over in India, and it's recorded in those scriptures. Whereas the other faction that, as Israelites, I'm saying, we could not stand this dude. Matter of fact, the one we couldn't stand was the Antiochans or the Antiochus, but it was Epiphanes or whatever. Both of them were just as bad. There was no good Grecian, put it that way, in the Maccabean scriptures. There's no good Grecian. Anyway, thus the sons of Alexander here are positive proof of ancient powerful Grecian influence in this region, yet are no proof at all of any infusion of Grecian blood. And the lost tribes of Naphtali, Dan, Zebulun, and Asher, which are already noticed, were reported by Dr. Wolf in this very region. In this very region are positive proof that there was once a very strong Israelite cultist influence there, but are no proof at all of any lost tribes nor of any Israelite genealogy. Sheesh. It's like, what's going to make somebody happy right about now? Another illustration of an honorary sonship is afforded by the so-called Cappadocian tablets, VIZ, letters and contracts of ancient Assyrian trading stations planted in the Hittite country. These little stations were established by the ancient city of Ashur. The tablets come from a period between Naram Sin of Agad or of Agad and Ibisin of the last dynasty between 2700 and 2300 BC. The city of Ashur is usually referred to as the city, simply. No other place is conceded like dignity. Oh my goodness. No other place is conceded like dignity. Dignity is the one city. The trading posts from which the documents come are known as Garu or Karu. Landsberger suggests that since the Karu or Quay at each river or okay, we're going to come back to that because I don't think we'll read it. Man, hold on. Or Quay at each river or canal market in Mesopotamia was the mercantile center. The term Karu was extended to all trading posts inland towards in America, like Port William or Port Hudson, Port Royal, Westport or Jamesport, Norrisport, Newport, Rocheport, Rockport, all in Missouri, show the like American pioneer custom. So it's like the same thing, as being like up here. All this, they would all dock at the city. You know what I'm saying? It was a central trading hub. So back when we was in, I believe Yoram Yahoo spoke about it, Ezekiel spoke about it, certain little trading posts of like Tyre, Zidon, and a couple other places, that their trading posts were so so talked about, so revered, that when the Most High is going to do something to it, it's going to make everybody around, everybody sick. Like, excuse me, what are we going to do now? The great city is destroyed. That was our trading spot. And so this is very, very, very reminiscent of the scriptures we had went through. So, um, okay, so this transposes a call into causal, then turns Z to S and ignores the guttural H, CF, McAllister, the Philistines, pages 28, 30, and 36. But if they were Canaanite coast people, why are they not reported as one of the sons of Canaan? The order of the text suggests, especially the great southern oasis, the Anamim, and the preceding verse may be a transposition of Amenim, the inhabitants of the great oasis of the god Amen. But see Hastings' Dictionary of the Bible, wood, source of the river Oxus. See this right here. Yeah, that's kind of telling. Like that's kind of makes you just not want to, say this after prayer anymore. You know what I mean? Anyway, these Assyrian trading posts were internally autonomous, right? Cases between their own members they dealt with in their own way through their own assembly. In matters involving outsiders, they had to recognize the authorities and the laws of the land in which the trading post was situated. The karu is often expressed by a ideogram, tur gal, or tur, and gal, which is usually eldest son, but in some cases the karu is followed by sahir or sahir or gal, great merchant. The chief merchants of the post were the official council. So the chief merchants they were the ruling officials, right? It suggests that successful trade was the all-controlling consideration. The type of community is of first importance, for we shall find it persist through millenniums, and that the hereditary secular head of the Jewish community has been called the merchant or the artisan of the community for 1,000 years. Now, with Ashur as the city, the term elder son for a chief trading post occasions no difficulties. It expresses the relation of such colony to the home city of Ashur. The head of such colony is addressed as father, sometimes as mother by those seeking his aid. And any one of the weaker trading posts might address a stronger one as its father. For example, the feeble post at Urshush or Urshus in what we now call Armenia writes to the strong colony of Kanish in western Cappadocia, that its own temple of the god Ashur has been robbed of everything, and the robbers have not been caught. You are our fathers and Adonais or lords. Do on your part whatever you can. Now here are father and son expressions 2,000 years older than the Jewish dispersion and the compilation of the Pentateuch. How will such phraseology be construed by the compilers of those latter days? Meaning, so once again, terminologies have changed throughout the years. So the receipts that you're going to see in some of these books back here and way back up and things like that. All these different screenshots. I was like saying, if it, if you really want to get into the, deeper history of some of these sources, and you start seeing these terminologies, father and son, and you know, great son, and things like that. It ain't have nothing to do with no literal father and literal son. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, you just have to pay very close attention. Let me get back down here. And right here we are. And we must remember that while the official staff of such an Assyrian elder son colony may have been altogether Assyrian, that would not necessarily be true if its army of employees. They could be local claims later of being sons of Assyria by peoples not of Assyrian descent, but under Assyrian control. All right. They may not be Assyrian by blood, but they will be Assyrian by being under the control of the Assyrians. Kind of like when y'all was watching 300 and you got this Persian army coming through, but the Persians might have been the main rulers of the whole entire army, but the different little armies throughout were of different descent, right? Different nationalities. But this ancient form of trade colony organization is very important because we shall find examples of its survival in some modern Jewish communities. A small group of merchants being the real rulers of a community, the rabbin in some cases being unknown, or the rabbin in some cases being unknown. Such heads may also be technically known as dayanim, or judges, the equivalent of the shoftahim or shofatim, from whom the book of Judges in the Old Testament takes its name. Such were regular Phoenician functionaries. The sufetes or sufets of Latin authors, which I'm not familiar with that terminology, but it makes sense. Before we get too far, there was some receipts right here, some different sources that if y'all wanted to, screenshot once again and run cross-reference some of these sources that you're seeing right here. Any of these you want to cross-reference any of those sources, by all means, grab you a screenshot and make sure that you go and run it through JSTOR, academia.com, wherever you may have a link of a way to find these books and research these sources, right? So I try to make sure in between pages when they got these sources right here, I stop. So for all y'all that are either first time coming through or you're coming back and seeing what we're talking about, just remember, I make sure to stop in between each page so that way y'all can catch these sources. All right. Right here. But addressing the head of such a chief colony as father brings another fact before us. Sometimes the directive center is referred to simply as Bit Dini, right? Bit Dini, house of judgment. The Arab Medina, or the Arab Medina, inscriptions of a latter time mention the Bit Dini or Ilu Adad, who was the chief god of Aleppo. This particular Bit Dini may have been a colony of Aleppo, possibly Aleppo itself. But the administrative father of such a mercantile colony would then be a Ab Bit-Dini. Ab meaning father, right here. So that's one of the things we have in common with certain Arabic words and things like that. You know, Ab or Abba still means father, or Ahaba, not Ahava, but Ahaba is father's love, all right, or love of the father. So, Ab Bidini, a judicial title that still persists in Judaism nearly 3,000 years after the times of these old Assyrian colonies in Cappadocia. Further, the Jewish Ab Beth-Dini was a official secondary to the Nasi, not Nazi, but Nasi, who is the chief functionary in Ezekiel, just as any ancient Assyrian or Abid-Dini was a local official secondary in the Patesi or Ishashaku, or king of the mother city of Ashur. That this mother and son relationship of colonies has left a survival in our popular word metropolis. So, some of the history on that word, metropolis, has to do with this mother son relationship of colonies. And when you put them all together, popular word metropolis will surprise the average reader. Greeks planted colonies in the same Hittite country 2,000 years after the above Assyrian and Akkadian posts. Now, I want to pause right quick because this is like the fourth or fifth time that he's made mention that Greeks and like whether it be Greek or Roman colonies or trading or relation or whatever in certain Hittite areas, which we know what would be people from Mount Seir, things like that, right? And we know good and well that Esau mixed with these Hittites and others of Mount Seir. And we also know from Jasher and some other scriptures how Esau's seed had also basically been integrated into the Greeks and Romans. So when we're seeing this, it kind of brings back memories. When you constantly keep seeing Greeks and Hittites, this is Esau, Edom. This is some when the scripture said that Esau's seed had became one with the Romans or one with the Kittim or the Grecians. No, it didn't say the Greeks. It didn't say the Yavanim. It was saying the Kittim or the Romans, they became one nation of Edom. So Edom and Rome. Anyway, Greeks planted colonies in the same Hittite country 2,000 years earlier after the Assyrian and Akkadian posts. Each strong colony like Sinope or Sarasis or Trebizond that put small colonies along the coast and inland was known as a mother city or metropolis. And the smaller posts so planted were controlled by and tributary to the protecting mother city. Xenophon marching westward from Trebizond records some difficulties with Greek trading posts whose mother city was Sinope, and of the Mosun or Oikoi or Tower House's people. He writes that they had a mother city with adjacent villages, but this puts before us again the daughters or suburbs of ancient Palestinian towns. In 2 Samuel 20 and 14 through 22, Abel of the house of Ma'akah in the tribe of Naphtali is spoken of as an ancient center of counsel for a region around it, and consequently known as a mother city in Yasharal. It was probably a colony of the Armaean kingdom of Ma'akah of 2 Samuel 10 and 6. Let me go ahead and let y'all grab some of those resources right there as well, some of them little receipts. Remember, some of y'all that are just joining up with us, just coming on in between each of the pages, there's receipts. You know what I'm saying? There's sources in there. So go ahead and screenshot those sources, you know what I'm saying? And you can look those things up if you feel like it, you know what I'm saying, to kind of research the research of this super expensive book. There are familiar coins of Laodicea in northern Phoenician or on the northern Phoenician coast that bear the legend Laodica or Mbet Canaan or Canaan. Laodicea is a mother in Canaan. It should be noticed that this is very far north of the Canaan of the popular Bible reader. The people were called Phoenicians. The people we call Phoenicians have no such name for themselves. They are simply sons of certain cities like Gebalites, Tyrians, Sidonians, Arvadites, etc. An old Phoenician inscription, Jacinius reads, to the mother of the Sidonians of Kitium or Melite, Berytus, and a sister of Tyre. The cities of Kitium in Cyprus and Melita and Berytus are colonies of the great fishing towns. Sidon, another inscription reads to Tyre, a mother of Sidonians. So once again, when you're looking through Yaram Yahu, aka Jeremiah, or Quazak, oh my goodness, I'm just gonna say Ezekiel right now. So looking through Jeremiah and Ezekiel, and you start seeing these prophecies that are going to come to play on not just Egypt, but Zidon, Tyre, Lebanon, and other areas. You start seeing once again these huge trading post cities. And that's basically what he's going down the line talking about right now. He's been doing it for such a long time, for real. So many pages and paragraphs of going through talking about these different fishing towns, right? And I guess we're kind of getting what we was asking for a little bit, or what I was asking for a little bit, like some historical references about some of these things when we were going through the prophets, and they were talking about some of these major cities that were merchant cities. And this brother right here, this person is actually going in depth, a whole lot more depth than I bargained for, about what made some of these cities mother cities, father cities, son cities, brother cities, and the terminology that they used back then that has since then changed into something else, And he just keep breaking it down and breaking it down more and more and more on why some of these cities that you're going to see all throughout the scripts are that way, why they were so famous as fishing towns or merchant cities and things like that, huge trading posts. So when the Most High pronounces a curse upon some of these cities, and the inhabitants round about are, you know what I'm saying, distraught because they're like, what are we going to do? That was our livelihood, because they sold everything. And when I mean everything, I mean everything. They sold people and, you know, textiles. They sold everything. You name it, they were selling it. We're just going to leave it like that. So later inscriptions show sharp rivalry at times between the leading Phoenician cities, each claiming to be a mother city politically, whether chronologically or not. But the sum of the evidence indicates that Tyre was really the older colony. You see that name come up so many times in the prophets. You know what I'm saying? As far as the Most High, you know, pronouncing a curse upon this place, and he's going to destroy it, wipe it out, lay it desolate. So probably this ancient Semitic phraseology was adopted by the Greeks from their contacts in Asia Minor. For the term metropolis does not occur in Greek literature till the century of Xenophon and Herodotus. Their use of the word in speaking of towns in Asia Minor is not thrusting a Greek idea into the Oriental speech, but it is a literal report of ancient Oriental phrase. Ezekiel's picture of Jerusalem as a mother city in Ezekiel 19:2, and as a daughter of Amorite and Hittite father cities and mother cities, 16:3 and 44, and Hosea's rebuke of Samaria as a mother city in 2:2 and 4:5, use the same ancient terminology. Ezekiel 23:2 reminds Jerusalem and Samaria that they are both daughter cities of an older mother colony of Sodom. So Ezekiel 16 and 46, being a younger colonial daughter in the topography of Palestine and in Joshua, etc. The daughter cities or suburbs are specified more than 60 times. But why not call such suburban posts of a mother city its sons instead of its daughters? Because the term son is already shown implied political subjection to an alien power. Now, once again, I know this sounds real boring talking about, you know, cities, posts, suburbs, daughter cities, mother cities, father cities, things like that. He's trying to make sure he exhausts all the possibilities, that it's not just about a place being called or when they wrote off to somebody saying, we are your sons, or you are our fathers, things like that, that we start to understand not just the literal terminology, but also the political or the economical terminology, or the usage of the word daughter, son, brother, things like that, right? So he's making sure to, like I said, exhaust all possibilities and going down through all the history of things that he can come up with, and even biblical terminology to back it up as to the usage of these phrases, that you can find it in scripture like this. So that way, as we continue on, and you start seeing that certain tribes or certain peoples were calling themselves sons of this or sons of that. Okay, how do you mean that? Right? So that way, when they say they're sons of Israel or sons of Asher or sons of Dan, sons of Naphtali, sons of Reuben, sons of Gad, or even or Joseph, right? All the way through. Which way do they truly mean that? Because especially when they don't have, some of these places don't have enough tradition. They don't have enough oral tradition. They don't have enough custom tradition. They haven't retained any of the things in which they used to do. And so in this book, he says they've lost so much of their Judaism, for lack of better terminology on his part, right? Because what he's really trying to say is the functions of the way, the laws, statutes, commandments, the feast days, things like that, customs. So many places or some of these so-called tribes that they found that have exhausted the possibility, saying that that they're sons and things like that, but they still lack certain things. And so that reminds me of one of the scriptures that cut me, right? When I was saying that when the Most High proposed a question about our dispersion, our exile, about all of Yasharal, not just Judah, Benjamin, Levi, some of the tribes that pertain to just me or some of the rest of us, but even the rest, the northern tribes. He said, even as I dispersed them, he said, can the seed thrive? And so that brings up, okay, well, what did the Most High really mean when he said that? Can the seed thrive? Some people, would look at that and say, okay, can they multiply? Right? Can the people still multiply in the lands in which I scattered them to? Well, when you're looking at it from this angle over here, can the seed thrive by retaining the customs in which the Most High had given us? That's a whole nother way to look at it. So that's why I can, even though the way Alan H. Godby is like exhausting all these possibilities, we've been going over this city conversation, right? Daughter cities, son cities, father cities, mother cities. And he's exhausted this conversation. He's, like I said, now it makes more sense when we start looking at which tribes throughout this book, when he's starting to point out, okay, these folks, and the suggestions on how to rewrite Hebrew history, because you got so many other pseudo scholars out here that are blanket statement and calling people, lost tribes of Israel, when they're clearly not. But some have customs, traditions, and they can point their lineage. They can call out their lineage all the way back to Adam. Now, even though they may have lost some of their traditions, that's part of one of the curses, right? Remember that, right? The Most High said that he was going to, that we were going to forget the commandments. We were going to forget these things. And he's talking about all 12 tribes. But some of these 10 tribes that they've came across in India, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and things like that, in other areas, and even in China, in the Orient, and things like that, they've been able to recite prayers that they no longer remember the meaning to. They can recite the prayer in their native language, but they don't know the meaning of the words anymore, because they've lost, they've lost their language. They may have retained it as far as that prayer, but the understanding of the language, they don't know their language anymore. So there's a lot of things, a lot of things, right? So right here. So, but why not call such suburban posts of a mother city its sons instead of its daughters? Because of the term son as already shown or implied political subjection to an alien power. The distinction still persists throughout North Africa, where the tradition or fact of ancient supremacy is jealously preserved. The ethnologist Ratzal observes that in all this area, the Benai or sun tribes, built tribes, are regularly the subject or dependent tribes, while Ulad or born tribes are aboriginal or the conquerors or masters, often boasting an immemorable or immemorial ascendancy as freeborn. All right. So, I'm going to go right back here. Some of y'all that have been chilling with us chilling with me the whole time, grab these receipts. So, see, Elslin, Sidon, the old notion that Tsid meant fish in Phoenician as it does in Aramaic is not justified, though tunny fishing was a leading Phoenician industry. There was certainly a god, TSD, but we do not know how to pronounce the name, nor do we know his functions. Possibly it was the name of a favorite fish. The tunny or tunny appears on some ancient coins as the source of a city's commercial prosperity. Anyway, so now down here, right? Names like Benai Mausa or Ulad Nun or Nun illustrate the point. It is hold on. Let me pause. Up here, we also see, and this also helps explain why hey, Shalom family, good to see y'all. So this right here helps us also explain some things, because remember, if those of y'all that have been tuning in and watching like the first 2 chapters and whatnot, he's constantly been able to find and recite the fact that Israelites originate or are actually in Central Africa. And there's been plenty of evidence of this. And then some of their migrations, which you see in scripture, like in Kings, Chronicles, and such, or even in First, Second Samuel, things like that. There's been some migration patterns that can definitely be explained. And as we continue to go on through this, you see that some of the northern tribes, once again, have been dispersed or migrated into Afghanistan, Pakistan, Dagestan, things like that, all through India or West Coast India, things like that. North, I said Northwest, I think India, also in the Orient, things like that. But all through Africa, right here, He said the distinction still persists, talking about this term son. The distinction still persists throughout North Africa, where the tradition or fact of ancient supremacy is jealously preserved. So the ethnologist Rotzel observes that in all this area, the Benai or Sun tribes, built tribes, right, are regularly the subject or dependent tribes, while Ulad or born tribes are aboriginal or the conquerors or masters, often boasting their ascendancy as freeborn. So, this is one of the main reasons why our Bantu Hebrew languages have so many dialects, because ever since our dispersion all throughout the rest of Africa, or Ake Bulan or Akel Bulan, right? So being dispersed all through and then being in contact with some of these other tribes that have originated there. They've been there, right? They were born tribe, aboriginal tribe, whereas some of our tribes end up becoming Benai or sun tribes, meaning built tribes, subject to and dependent on the tribe there. Because remember, the Most High made us small amongst many. He dispersed us all through many, many lands. So now we start taking on dialects of different tribes. And now our so-called Hebrew has changed, or Ibu or Ewe has changed so much. We've picked up so many different consonants, so many different vowels, so many different pronunciations of the same word, and then the word maybe even have changed altogether throughout our dispersions. So this right here is helping us also understand a lot of this and why. So names like Benai Mousa, Ulad Nun illustrate the point. It is the distinction made in the Old Testament between Sarah tribes and Hagar tribes, and still cherished by Orthodox and pedigree boasting Yehudis. All right. So that right there was a perfect point. The distinction between Sarah tribes, meaning those that descended from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, right? Versus those that descended from Hagar and Ishmael. And even when we came into being scattered and becoming now subjected to the Hagar tribes, our dialect changed, our language changed. The Wolad Sarah still vaunt their superiority to the Benai Ishmael. See? I didn't even read that. I wasn't even paying attention to that. But we see at once that Benai Mousa or Benai Yasharal does not mean the legitimate descendants of Moses or Yasharal. The same distinction survives among some Arab tribes in Somaliland. Habar means grandmother, and the tribal names Habar Awal, Habar Garahajas, or Habar Talahala or Tajala etc., tell of a time when the name of a female ancestor was the tribal boast or the assertion of independence and superiority. The distinction clarifies for us the pretensions of all daughter cities, particularly the daughter of Zion, daughter of Babylon, the daughter of Tyre, and were the sons of Jacob or sons of Jacob, sons of Yaakov, any other than subject districts annexed or conquered by an invading Yaakov or Yasharal clan. The ancient records present the fact that place names like Asher, Gad, Zebulun were known in Palestine centuries before any Israelites were there. Zebulun appears as a rebellious political son of Egypt as early as 2100 BC. The question has been long familiar to students of the ancient Orient, but that an ancient son of Yasharal may be parallel to the royal sons of Cush, Nubian and subjects of Egypt, is not familiar to the general reader. But the distinction, which Rotzel points out between daughter tribes or born tribes and the son or built on annexed tribes, originated in the days of tracing legitimacy and right of succession through the female line. But all this son and daughter phraseology points to a similar early relationship, trading posts planted in Palestine by various enterprising neighbors, near or far, many of which trading posts had daughter outposts. The process has gone on in Palestine from the remotest ages, but with such terminology, tradition of an ancestral town may be in time construed as descent from a person. So this is why, right? This whole conversation of father, son, mother, sister, son, cities and tribes and such, later on in the line will be misconstrued as being a descendant of a person and not just being controlled by or under subjection to, whether it be political or economical or whatever it may be. So Benjamin Nahavindi of Nahavand, when records are lost, when records are lost and the city gone, could be explained as descended from a person or clan named Nahavand. The writer has Houston or Houston kin, but the Scotch Irish folk who called themselves of Hughes Town included many families that had no original genealogical connection. Again, it has to be emphasized that traditions of descent from some common eponym do not prove any genealogical connection at all, but they urge us to seek for the historic reason for such eponym. And remember, an eponym is basically the reason why it got its name, where the name come from, right? Whether it be fact or fiction, the name may have been given to that place, but what was the influence? That's the real answer. That's the real question, I should say. what's the real answer, or what's the real reason why that place was named like that? Was it just to be a copy? Was it to trick somebody? To trick many people? Is it legit? You know, that's what the whole reason these eponyms come from. But this takes us further in the revisions of our notions of the ancient world. The inscriptions of the above mentioned Naram Sin and the geographical statement of the extent of the empire of his father, Sargon of Akkad, show influence extending to Cyprus and Crete and the coasts of Greece, to Kaftara and Anaku, lands beyond the Upper Sea, the Kaftor and Anakim of the Old Testament. We cannot maintain that there was an uninterrupted Assyrian trade activity through all this domain through 2,000 years. But the fact remains that early Greek geographers apply the name Assyria to the Black Sea coast from the mouth of the Halys or Hales to Sinope. This was a natural commercial outlet for what they then called Cappadocia. No Assyrian inscription yet found asserts political control of this coast. But the fact of commercial control when Greek geographers called it Assyria goes without saying. But these ancient Assyrian trading posts in Hittite or Cappadocian lands compel us to think that the southern Akkadians had like posts wherever they thought it important to have them, perhaps some in Palestine. Conversely, we recognize that Kaftor, Crete, and the land of Anak had their Philistine and Anakim trading posts wherever they were profitable 3,000 years before the Christian era. Modern Western diplomats dealing with China and Japan introduced favored nation clauses, each Western people demanding an equivalent for any privileges conceded another. The like competition by ancient Orientals produced at each important commercial center a group of petty foreign quarters, each internally autonomous and maintaining its favorite cultist shrine, if financially able to do so. 2,000 years after, these Assyrian and Akkadian trading posts in Asia Minor and the Mediterranean, we find Israelites establishing market colonies, AV streets. So wherever they could, and Ben-Hadad speaking of the like posts which the Aramaeans had in Samaria, 1 Kings 20 and 34, we have Saul credited with renewing a kingdom whose prestige had been shattered, 1 Samuel 11 and 14, and extended it over Ammon and Moab, and north over Zobah, 1 Samuel 14 and 47, and with success in protecting Israelite trade, 2 Samuel 1 and 24. We see that ancient Hebrews and the latter Israelites had son colonies, whose history the Old Testament writers were not interested in compiling. Considering the close alliance with Phoenicia and Sheba, credited to Solomon, his commerce with kings of Arabia, and his trade with Mutsri, and his navy of Tarshish or Minoans, and with the kings of Hittites and Aramaeans, and his intimate relations with Moab, Ammon, Edom, and Sidon, 1 Kings 9 and 26, 10 and 1 through 13, And then verse 15, verse 22 and 28, and then 11 and 1, we are compelled to recognize the establishment of many Israelite trading posts and to admit that traditions of Israelite colonizing activity reaching back to Solomon's time having a priori grounds for asking polite consideration. 400 years later, Ezekiel 27 shows knowledge of many regions touched by Phoenician Israelite trade, with Israelite merchants in the various Tyrian ports. The persistence with which each enterprising commercial colony refused amalgamation or joining forces, even with those most nearly akin, is illustrated by the town of Tripoli on the Phoenician coast. The name tells of its origin in Greek times, from 3 cities, being 110 miles north of Tyre and 40 miles south of Arvad. It was a federal colony of Tyre, Zidon, and Arvad, but each of the 3 cities jealously maintained its separate quarter of the town. There was no assimilating community ideal. The immediate point for our present inquiry is that the above cited Israelite commercial ventures certainly produced like daughter quarters in foreign cities that strove to remain segregate from the independent of the local power, not becoming sons of their political hosts, meaning that Israelite communities and trading posts were popping up all over the place, but they wanted to stay independent and not be considered with being sons or daughters of any of these communities or any of these peoples. They stayed segregated away from that. They were simply their own entity within these places. That's what that means. So with equal certainty, there would also develop local foreign communities of sons of Yasharal. Later, local traditions of being sons of Yasharal would be no evidence of lost tribes, nor even of Israelite ancestry. Such traditions could not prove more than genealogical connection with former employees, slaves, or proselytes of ancient trading posts. For each foreign market concession, with its favorite cultus or inevitability, had certain propagandist possibilities. So many times over, we had already made mention of Psalm 83. There's a reason why Psalm 83 was written. And there's so many reasons, because there's so much evidence throughout that psalm. So this is why it's so hard now. And he's exhausting all these possibilities of finding out, okay, the lost tribes are lost for what reason? How do they maintain being lost? And the reason why is you have the crafty council. We've been dispersed in so many different places. And then you got people that want to appropriate and steal the name. They become proselytes themselves or converts. And then now they're saying that they are the people and they are not the people. This type of thing has been going on for so long. Way before the Ashkenazi was doing it. That part. That part, remember that. Just etch that in your brain. People have been calling themselves Israelites or Yehudi before the Ashkenazi converted, before the Ukrainians converted, before the Karaite conversion, before the synagogue of Satan converted over to being calling themselves Jews and then Jewish and all of that. For each foreign market concession with its favorite cultists inevitably had certain propagandist possibilities. People that would lie, run lies after lie, and after the lie is told so many times, it becomes the truth. Commercial success would attract many to it. The smaller traders, or those from a people maintaining no local autonomous trading post, would attach themselves to the local colony, offering them the greatest advantages. It still is commercially advantageous in the Orient for the stranger to make a minka, which is literally an introduction, gift to the favored shrine of the district in which he wishes to do business. We see Jacob or Jacob making such minka in Genesis 32 and 13, or verse 18, and then 20, and then 33 and 10, to the Adonai of Edom, his brother. And in 43 and 2, or 43 and 11, and then verse 15, and then 26, Israelites offer a mincha to the man who represented the priesthood of On, 41 and 45. So various trade peoples bring Solomon an annual mincha for the privilege of local trade in 1 Kings 10 and 22 through 25. The Yahoo shrine expected such mincha in 1 Samuel 2 and 17. The loss of the mincha revenue might be accounted a serious matter. Joel 1 and 9, and then also verse 13. Since all favor-seeking peoples are expected to bring it. It's an offering. Isaiah 66 and 20. The institution shows us that ancient commerce had a propagandist influence. The stories from ancient Palestine that Israelites worshiped the Balaam of neighboring peoples, and in Judges 10 and 6, mean that these neighbors had prosperous trading posts in the land, each with its shrine. In ancient Babylonia, we have inscriptions from kings who report their fixing of the boundaries for each colony and its shrine. And if anyone wished to free a slave, he had to specify what God quarter of the city was to be the freedman's home. I hope that made perfect sense to you, because it comes down to being an offering. It was an expectation of an offering. And then when you're dealing with these pagan communities and you want to free a slave, whether it was an Israelite slave or whoever, you had to acknowledge their false deity and say what quarter of the city was that person going to call home. That's foolishness. Another important fact is here. Such a privilege exacting internally autonomous colony is a ghetto in posse. Oh my Yah. Should the colony be permanently restricted to a small area, becoming greatly overcrowded in time while emphasizing its aloofness from the people of the land, the actual ghetto will result. As a social system or as a social unit, it is doomed to final failure. On the other hand, if the trade colony be conceded much land from the first, it may become a powerful propaganda center, drawing multitudes by its apparent temporal advantages. Meaning, just because we get saluted to or secluded to what is known as a ghetto, overcrowding happens and all that. On one hand, it could be the downfall of our people. On the other hand, it just means that all of our trading posts are all in the same area. Now you have an overabundance of options and opportunities to find what you're looking for. And if that don't make sense to, man, like there's so many projects out there where you can get everything. You can find everything in these jacks. It's the same way, nothing changed. So it's like, man. Anyway, as a social system or as a social unit, it is doomed to final failure. On the other hand, if the trade colony be conceded much land from the first, it may become a powerful propaganda center, drawing multitudes by its apparent temporal advantages. The Phoenician migration, synchronous with the earlier Cappadocian, Akkadian colonies that we have noticed, and with Sargon's report that his influence extended into the Mediterranean, illustrates the point. The Tyrian tradition is that their island site was a relatively uninhabited sanctuary site for a long time, that it became an influential city very slowly. The claim is supported by the fact that Tyre is not noticed in the Egyptian records until the time of the latter Ramessid kings. It was not hampered by being the restricted Phoenician ghetto of some older town, and the migration of the Philistines and their allies down the coast, ravaging and destroying, probably left the island colony the commercial leader and of the coast traders. It is the first correspondence. Do not hold on. It is of first importance to remember that such commercial colonies and correspondence do not prove political dominance or displacing of the local language. The Hittite leaders quoted are in cuneiform characters, which the writers found more convenient than the Hittite picture writing, but they are in the Hittite language. There is no present evidence that in those early times Assyria ever dominated the Hittite region politically. Similarly, we shall see India adopting Phoenician Hebrew script, with no evidence of any Semitic political control at that time. That Greece accepted the so-called Phoenician alphabet does not prove Phoenician political dominance of Greece, nor does the use of cuneiform script and Akkadian language in the El Amarna letters prove that ancient Babylonia ever had any political control in Palestine. The popular speech was not affected by this diplomatic correspondence. I hope that makes sense to y'all, meaning that just because this written language was, dominant doesn't mean that the people were dominant. So those of y'all that understand this terminology, that's been used for so many times, they call it the lingua franca, the language of commerce, right? Or, yeah, the language of commerce. The most popular language becomes a language of commerce. And that's what they call the lingua franca. But he's saying right here that this really don't mean nothing. Just because the language was popular doesn't mean it established control. Or even if the language was dominant, it didn't mean that those people were in control. Excuse me. The Hebrew of the Old Testament remains a witness to the fact. Thus, an initial examination of traditions of being sons of Yasharal, accompanied by an inquiry into the significance of such colloquial phraseology and a consideration of its historic social origin, shows that every such ancient tradition may be a reminiscence of historic events of much importance, but not one of these many traditions can be assumed in advance of a special historical investigation to prove any genealogical connection with Yasharal. Oh my Yah! That was a stupid long chapter. My Yah, I had no idea that chapter was going to take that long. All right, family. You know what? Oh my Yah. Oh my Yah. I'm just going to say it like this, family. Yes, that was long. That was dumb long. I had no idea. Family, it was going to take that long to get through it. That 3 hours. 3 hours and some change. I'm look. By all means, if you got to go back and break that thing down little by little, you already know. Please do. But yeah. And with that being said, family, I love y'all more than you ever know. I promise you. And we're not gonna play no music tonight. No. We've already had such a long reading. We're just going to leave it at that. Overall, to summarize everything, we kind of did it over and over and over again. But for those that tune in late or whatever, to sum the whole chapter up, basically in a nutshell, it's so hard to find the actual lost tribes and to let's see here, to agree that they really are lost tribes is not as easy as one would think, right? Because they have to carry a certain amount of traits as far as not just the look, but the history, tradition. There has to be a number of things that can actually be proven, right? Other than that, you might end up finding out that these were imposters that just know how to quote certain things to a point and then say, yeah, we just don't know our language anymore. So that's why it's so hard to do these things. But I'm waiting on the point to where the curses come in, right? Things that the Most High said would mark his people. I'm waiting for that to play a part in this book. And so with that right there being said, family, if you haven't already, please hit that like button on your way out, family. It only takes a second. It costs nothing. And we're getting ready to get up off of here right now. I love you. Most High bless you. And Most High willing, we will link back up for chapter 4 on Thursday. All right. Oh my yeah. Shalom, a barakah to you always, family abroad. Thank y'all for tuning on in, and we are out. Yes, Lost Tribes, a myth. If you do not have this book, but there's the link. Make sure you go back to the post section here on Red Letter Wrapped. Scroll down to where you see books to add to your library, and then it'll say Book of Jubilees. Click the more, and then scroll on down through all those books. Whatever you don't have, by all means, grab them. This book is in that list, and also the book that we're reading on Saturdays or on Shabbats. For the others that look at it that way, we're going through the 12 patriarchs. So that is also in that list. All right. Shalom, family.